Do it. You want them talking while we're voting, or supposed to? While we're counting.
Yes. The big guy with Vermin? I missed him. I would recognize Mr. Weeks. Did he have red hair? Well, Mr. Weeks, I mean, unless he dyed it, Mr. Weeks has red hair.
Oh no, you have authority. She tried to do Okay. Actually, here's what we're going to have to get. You've got the list of delegates all in here. We got to make sure people all over the place, they're not worried about where they sit. We got to make sure only delegates are involved. So I think what we could say is that we're going to give people some time to get in. If you're a delegate, I want you to come up. You guys check them off, give them a ballot, give them some people. Where's Sean? Sean has the list. Where's Sean? Got the table last time we looked. Sean!
What's up, Casey? It is up.
You know better. Mr. Dan, how are you, sir?
Hey.
Nice to meet you, Dan. How are you doing?
We're getting likes and views. So.
Great.
Yeah.
We start assembling.
Do it out there. Please have them go out there to get the ballot.
All right. We want to do that first. Keep a couple here.
I agree with my esteemed predecessor.
All right.
We got 3 chairs that all agree.
Okay. We have 2 items left on the agenda. One is we're going to hear from a number of presidential candidates. They'll be given time to speak and to answer questions. The other thing is to elect our delegates to the National Convention. We have a ballot for the election of delegates to the National Convention. It's out there, the ballot.
Did they take them out there? Or
Who has the ballot?
Victor just took them out.
All right, Victor has taken the ballots. They're outside there at the table. I'm going to recess for 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask all the delegates, only delegates, go out and they'll check your name off the list to make sure that you're a proper person to receive the ballot. Take your ballot, so you'll have the ballot. That'll save us some time
You
later.
will also get a pencil that says South Carolina Libertarian Party.
With an eraser.
So that we, or do you want to wait for it all back?
So, we'll hold the next order of business for 5 minutes. We'll recess for 5 minutes. Delegates, please find your way out.
Find our way out. Delegates gotta find our way out. How many delegates did we have?
34.
You don't have to put 33 down. You don't have to use all your marks.
We'll explain that out later. Just get the balance.
Excuse me, sir. You know how people will do though, once they get it in hand, they'll start marking it. Maybe best to explain early. It does make it a lot easier to see. Yes, it's a lot.
No, I guess I'm supposed to have one too, aren't I? I'll get it later.
Yeah, that's pretty quick for
I know.
that many people.
Maybe they take more than I gave you, so.
They'll always take it. Oh, keeping them on tight. Shortly. How long does it take? The thing is, every lane there, he's got to go find it, check it off.
30 seconds each.
It'll be explained. Tell them it'll be explained.
Hopefully Victor's helping us with that. Came to one of
We'll explain. We will. Don't start.
Yes, you can go to national. As long as no. We know it's you.
Okay, good. Hold on. I told you originally that I wanted to be a part of it, and then as shit was going down, I was like, man, maybe I should go back and real time. Yeah. I want to go and play. I'm a gangster. Picking counties. We be picking counties.
So you'll need to get well, one of the things that handing out the ballot also serves to realize what you suggested it is, we now will know how many people are here, how many people left, so we know our numbers. No, I want to explain, yeah. But you want to tell them to wait until it's explained.
Calm down. All right, everybody in your seats. Okay, the balloting for national delegates will be explained. I'll just do it, Dave, just a minute while we get ourselves settled. Do you have an updated credentials count, delegate count?
He will when they hand out all the ballots.
We have 39 delegates now, Mr. Chair.
39 delegates.
39 delegates.
So a majority is 20 and 2/3 is
26.
He's got to use the count, the
He's gotta use the
calculator.
calculator.
Math over there.
Okay, 26 and 2/3, very good. We will start in just a moment, hearing from the presidential candidates. But before that, I want Stuart to explain how this balloting
Please,
works.
Stewart is head of the Credentials Committee. I'm head of the Credentials Committee, not Stewart.
I'm sorry, the chairman of the Credentials Committee will explain the balloting process, and you guys can be looking at this and thinking about it during the next hour while we're hearing presentations.
All right, thank you. As you know, the National Party bases delegates to the National Convention on two things. One is your percentage of vote in the last presidential race. The other is your percentage of membership. Now, coming into this weekend, it was our calculation that we had 16.57 delegates, which meant it was likely we would get 17. I have found out there's been a huge influx of membership, so it's more likely we'll have 15 than 17. But regardless of that, we have decided to stick with the possibility that we'll have 17, which means by our rules, you can pick up to 17 people as delegates or alternates. And you may notice that the ballot says there are 33 people being nominated for 34 positions. That's not exactly true. There's a typo. Because the chair, standing over there, round of applause for our new chair. He changed bow ties. Okay. By our rules, the state party chairman is an automatic delegate. That also means we have our one registered delegate to start the process with national, all that stuff. So he has the labor of love of putting the other 33 names in the system, which takes approximately 4 days. And the speed of that website. I've done it 4 times. They're ranked by the number of votes. Let's say somebody gets every single person in the room voting for them. Well, they're going to be higher than somebody who gets 3 people voting for them. At the 2018 convention, the last alternate who got, was it 4 votes at the convention?
4 or 5, yeah.
Was seated as a delegate. All right? We name this number of people because sometimes people don't show up. Sometimes people don't tell us they are going to not show up. But we've solved that in the rules. So you'll be given an opportunity to vote. These nominees were selected by their counties. So this term, we have people who actually understand where they're going, understand the process. No, some people who were elected did not understand what it takes to go to the National Convention. And when they found out, gosh, I got to pay $100+ a night for a room. So everybody on here is capable of running. They're all qualified to run. They've all been nominated by their county parties. So what we would like you to do is, using your South Carolina Libertarian Party golf pencil with eraser, or
Is that
any other
the only instrument we could use?
No.
Yes. No, okay.
No, I'm just promoting our.
Yes,
come on,
right,
man.
right. You too.
Come on.
SCLP.org.
You may vote for up to 34. All right. You can vote for everybody if you want to. You can vote for yourself if you want to, or anything in between. That is your choice. Undervoting is legal. Huh?
Not overvote.
But I was about to say, but not overvoting, and it's not possible to overvote because there's 33 people for 34 seats. So you can't possibly overvote. So and when you're done, if you can bring them to the secretary's table, the reason we're reversing this is there are a lot of people who are interested in knowing who the delegates are going to be tonight. Okay, the candidates want to know who the delegates are. This process takes it can take a couple hours to count all these things up and rank them. So if you can fill out your ballot and then bring them up, should we give them a couple, or should we just, while people are talking, let them just wander?
I would suggest fill out the ballots and just keep them until the presidential delegate.
There you
candidates
go.
are
All right,
done.
well, what I will do is I will let the convention chair take back the gavel and tell you what he just decided.
You can vote, keep it, I don't want it.
You're gonna do it.
No, no.
Sucker!
They have
No.
a question.
Out of order.
Question?
Did you say we had an influx of membership?
National.
And we have also But national hasn't. Since I don't have the numbers, I don't know whether we went up or down in the last week. You said what? We had like 1,500 new members?
National membership has passed 15,000.
It was 13,000 30 days ago.
But, yeah.
So we don't know what came from South.
We won't know how many delegates we get till probably another week, because they have to allow time for somebody who mailed in a renewal on October 31st for it to get there.
Right.
Then they have to add them up. Then the secretary has to be given, do you give her a straight IV of coffee for this thing, or does you just has to figure out the math and the formula. There's a spreadsheet. I've got it in ours for us. As soon as I know the number of national members, I can tell exactly how many we have, and it's going to be probably another week for her to make that report. So the rest of the country, most of them won't know, and all that does is that tells us how many down the list in number of votes are delegates and how many are alternates. I believe there's a good chance we're going to have 17 delegates, which would be the highest ever. That's because everybody in this room worked to build membership. So you should give yourselves a round of applause.
So you've all got the ballots, hang on to them, been giving it some thought, to deal with it right now. I want to give the presidential candidates an opportunity to talk, and then after that's done, we'll collect them all, rather than taking the time to do it now. I see two questions. Start, Doug.
Yeah, hey there. So I guess one of the things I'm confused about is you're saying that ballparking, there might be about 17 spots for delegates to go to national. Then why is it here saying that you can vote up to 34?
Because our rules say we vote for twice the number of delegates to handle alternates. That's what our rules say.
And they're ranked by the number of votes they get, which is why you
Well, so
don't
I
have to
think
vote for all of them. You can only vote for some if you want.
Okay.
And we rank them, and
So I'm
and if
ranking
it's...
these.
and
Okay,
if
not
it's-
just-
No, you're just putting a check by the ones you want, and we add it up.
It's approval.
It's
Just-
approval vote.
Yes, that's all, just approval. And if
You
you're
don't
tied-
have to vote for 33. You can vote for 5.
You vote for yourself.
Whatever you like.
Right, so be giving it thought, just hang on to them for now. Yes?
Mr. Chairman, point of information. Have we already amended the rules to allow them to speak?
Yes, we have.
We have already done that?
Yes, we
Yes.
did that, and it's part of the rules report.
We'd have 6 angry people if we hadn't. plus their entourages. We'd be mobbed.
That's right. All right, so, Case, is your question?
I am recording it
Okay,
right now.
all right. So we will collect them after
Oh, I don't care.
the candidates have spoken.
Mr. Chairman,
I just,
Delegate count went up to 40.
I'm sorry?
Delegate count went up
I have
to
this
40.
thing here.
Delegate?
We're going to the
Okay,
other side.
the secretary has just advised me that the delegate count is now up to 40,
Do you need more ballots? I printed exactly
which means
40.
that 50% is 21,
2/3,
2/3
27.
is 27.
And everyone got a ballot?
Every delegate has a ballot, correct? All right. Now, the presidential candidates that we have present in the room, the list I have anyway, and not all of these will be on the stage tonight, so we want to listen especially to them. And I'm just going to read the list of names, and I'm going to call them up in that order. Candidates, you'll be given 5 minutes to speak, and then we're going to allow 4 minutes for question and answer. So total 9 minutes each, and then a minute for the transition to the next guy. Stuart is going to be running the time clock. You all can see the clock on that monitor. The speaker can see the monitor right here. It says 15 right now. It's supposed to say 9. The list of the people we have here are Keenan Dunham, Ken Armstrong, and Vermin, Joe Jorgensen, Adam Kokesh, Kim Ruff, Vermin Supreme, and Jacob Hornberger. Ms. Foss already spoke this morning, as you recall. So we'll start with Keenan Dunham.
Yeah, my name is Keenan Wallace Dunham. I'm running for President 2020, Libertarian, and I'm chair of the Horry County Libertarian Party. I've helped local candidates there and have for a number of years. My main issue that I think is most important for our nation right now is civil liberties, and specifically the case of Julian Assange and also Chelsea Manning and Jeremy Hammond. are being held in jail regarding Julian Assange's case. So we need to save Julian Assange's life right now and pressure politicians to get him out of jail. Those other two are in jail to testify against him and refuse to, being held against their will to testify against him. This is a case where if we don't save these whistleblowers, next they'll be arresting journalists. They already are arresting journalists. Max Blumenthal is in jail right now regarding that. My campaign website is dunham2020.com, and you can look up these issues on there. I've posted about numerous topics, most issues, and also platforms and proposals for all those issues. My entire campaign is activism and open source. Anybody can use any ideas and help this country for activism. It's all activism. It's all ideas that I put out there openly for everyone. My campaign is about ideas. It's not about myself, my personality, me specifically. It's put out there openly, and I am helping everybody that I can with my campaign. My main platforms as far as policy are legalize cannabis, legalize gambling. These would both produce millions of jobs and opportunities for this country. And then legalize blockchain and Bitcoin completely. And then the final one is to eliminate personal income tax 100% and replace it with nothing. That's been said before in the Libertarian Party. It is the correct way to do it. We need to privatize Social Security and privatize Medicare because they're insolvent, they're not working, and my generation, future generations will not benefit from them. There should be private insurance that replaces Medicare, and Social Security should have a mass payout immediately. Please look at my website, Dunham 2020, and I'd like to hear your questions. Yes?
Have you run for office as a Libertarian before, and if so, what
Yes.
office?
I ran for president in 2016. I received votes. I was not able to speak at the convention, but I received 19 votes from Oregon. That's on Wikipedia. I have been in the local county, Horry County, Myrtle Beach area, helping local candidates for city council and other races, and basically been working locally since then. Any others? Yeah?
How do you propose to fund the government's budget if you eliminate the income tax?
Cut the military by 50%, cut the budget across the board. We can easily cut that budget because it's all waste. You'd have to cut the budget. There needs to be a slate of Liberty candidates. I can't do this on my own. You need a Republican, you need a Congress and a Senate that are Liberty-minded, whether they're from any party. So all my proposals are out there. They're not easy to get accomplished, but I'm putting them out there to bring more people into the Liberty movement. Yes?
How do you propose to take the 16th Amendment away then?
You don't have to. I thought that last time, but all you have to do is reduce it to 0 voluntarily with the government in hand. Anything else? I saw someone over there maybe. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Next candidate is Ken Armstrong.
Hey, good afternoon, and I want to say first I'm just really grateful to those of you who are from South Carolina, other than us visitors today. The hospitality we get here is just amazing. We've been into the state a couple of times on our campaigns and just loving it. So thank you for that. I'm Ken Armstrong. I am running for president. That's no big surprise to you. You can find out more about me at Armstrong2020.com, and that links to some news stories that cover policy issues and what have you. But what I want to talk about a little bit today, first I want to go a little bit off of text, because I was watching the news before I came down here, and Joe Biden is now asking for help from super PACs. And I think that we need to feel really sympathetic for poor Joe, because, you know, of course, Joe was the anti-super PAC candidate, but now he has discovered that he can't afford to pay for the private jets he needs for his campaign unless he gets super PAC money. So can I get an awe for Joe? I appreciate that, and I'm sure Joe and his friends appreciate that well. We'll stick a thumb in that idea, because I'm going to come back to that. But I wanted to, there's an old Buddhist, a Zen Buddhist koan that goes something like, if you say you're a Buddhist, you're not. And for those of you who have studied any relationship with Buddhism, you understand what that means, because there's a duality there. And we deal with that duality in our party, in that if you say you're a libertarian, there's a very good chance you're not, you know. Or what are we? Who is really a libertarian and who is not a libertarian? You know, if we dress alike, if we don't dress alike, if we, you know, all of the different characteristics that we tend to rate. How much money are we bringing in? We have people who won't be on the stage tonight because they haven't brought in a certain amount of money. I think we need to respect their campaigns. I do respect the criteria for the debate, but I think we need to respect all of the campaigns out there. We make each other better, and we make each other stronger. Vermin and I met in Dayton a month or two ago now, and jousted with canoe paddles, and had dinner together and had a good time. You know, Vermin and I aren't running similar campaigns, and we'll argue probably until the dawn of the next age who won the canoe paddle joust. But one thing I will tell you emphatically is Vermin and I are libertarians. And this is one thing that's really important to me, that I need to convey passionately and from my heart. As I look at the other candidates in the room, and I've gotten to know you in your little pictures online, some of you this is the first time we've met in person, I love you guys, and I mean that. And truly, we don't need to be running against each other. We need to be running for America.
Here, here.
On May 25th, one of us will be the nominee of our party. All of us need to line up behind that nominee, whoever it is. And between now and then, we don't need to be like the blue guys and the red guys ripping each other apart. We need to be honing each other's skills, honing each other's ability to lead the party. But at some point, the banner carrier from the party goes out in front of us, and we need to be about following that. As you well know, those of you who've been to conventions in the past, there's always a group that gets a little butthurt and goes away feeling like they didn't get the proper esteem or recognition. Let's not be that way. Let's be about the brand of the party that we're sending forward. Because what we're doing right now, in case you haven't been watching the news, and if you have, we have remedies for your stomach pain, but the country is in deep, deep trouble. Never in our history has there been a time when they need to hear what we have to say more than right now. And whether we say it with a boot on our head or a yellow tie or whatever it is, they need to hear what we have to say. So I have policy statements I can make to you about healthcare. I have a border initiative that I've done a recent press release on. Every policy initiative that you could talk about. But the one that's most important that I think that we need to talk about right now and always is if we don't get this budget deficit and our national debt taken care of, all the other things that we stand for will be meaningless. We'll be sending our children to debtor's prison. Okay? I'm open to your questions.
Have you run for office before, and if so, what office? When?
As a libertarian, no. I've held nonpartisan office in Honolulu County a couple of times.
would you favor a value-added tax in lieu of an income tax?
Value-added tax, that's kind of thorny ground, but that's a good model. I'm absolutely against income tax because it's a penalty on productivity. We do need to go to a consumer-based tax rather than a penalty on productivity.
What's your professional background?
Thank you. My background is a nonprofit executive. I'm a Weinberg Fellow of Hawaii Pacific University, which is an advanced program in nonprofit organizational development. I was a military officer, NATO-based commander. I was U.S. Consul representative to the Pelagi Islands, recommended for Federal Executive of the Year. So I've got deep background in government and nonprofits.
So the debt is obviously a sign of how horrible the system is, but what if that debt were used to dissolve the federal government?
What if the debt was used to dissolve the federal government? You know, I would be concerned about what we replace it with, and that's a long conversation.
What's your stance on climate change?
On what, I'm sorry?
What's your stance on climate change?
Climate change. I actually like what Arnold Schwarzenegger had to say about that, and this is probably the only time in my career that I'll endorse a Schwarzenegger statement. But the governor he's a deep believer in anthropogenic climate change. He believes in human-caused climate change. But he says the argument is stupid. We can argue that point until well beyond the event horizon and nobody wins. He said what we need to do is we need to start taking care of our environment without regard to who wins. In fact, we all know as libertarians that we often fight about who's right and we never get to the victory. That's the way we need to approach climate. We need to approach climate, and I believe in a libertarian approach to that. I believe that if we used a free market approach to solving the economy, getting rid of a whole bunch of regulations that damage, the environment, if we got rid of a whole bunch of regulations that damage the environment, we'd be in a lot better shape. So be happy to talk more about that if you have more questions, but generally where I'm coming from. More questions? Thank you so much for having me here, and I appreciate you making the time.
All right, our next candidate is Dan Vermin.
I had to sit all the way in the back just so I could take more time off. More speech time.
I'd have started the timer sooner if I'd known.
I'm Dan, taxation is theft Vermin. I hate taxes so much I changed my middle name. Not by petition. I didn't go to a court and ask to change my name. I did it by declaration because free men don't ask for permission. Right? All right. So how many of you have a driver's license in your pocket? Are you government property? Why are you carrying around a tag that's got the name of the government on it and your picture? Are you government property? Can everybody in this room say, I am not government property?
I am not government property.
Do you mean it when you say it?
No. If only it were true.
I like a simple life.
Well, here's the interesting thing. When I was growing up, I got my first car, I got my first traffic ticket, and I was like, this isn't cool. I got to go to court, I got to be treated like a criminal. And I started to object to that, and I started fighting it. And of course, I did the things that most people would do, like, oh, I wasn't speeding, or, all the little, whatever you can do to try to talk your way out of a ticket. But then I heard some weird conspiracy theorists talking about these courts aren't even real, and you don't even need a driver's license. And I thought it was interesting, but I was like, I could never try that. Well, I haven't had a driver's license for 12 years. I still have a car. I still go all over the country. Actually, for the past couple of years, I've been out of the country off and on because I have no respect for borders either at this point. But it's really interesting to see that you really don't need a driver's license in your pocket. And I know a lot of people object is, okay, what happens if you get stopped by the police and what's going to go down? And yeah, there are some issues with that, and there are some conversations to be had, but I've had plenty of tickets issued to me during this time that I haven't had a driver's license. I haven't paid a single one of them. In most cases, I don't even go to court. And I've realized that these courts, it's all a smoke and mirrors system. They have us believing that we're part of the system, that we are government property. That they have us in a mental captivity, believing that we're slaves, believing that we're part of government. And it's just not true. That only exists in our head. And if we can see that for what it is, we can get that out of our head. The income tax. Everybody hates the income tax, right? Is there anybody here who likes it? Okay, just checking. You? No, okay. So there's an interesting thing about the income tax, and I heard this from some conspiracy theorists, and it really took me 10 years to really understand it and get it to click. And that's that most Americans aren't supposed to be paying income tax. And I looked through the tax codes and I read the IRS's objections on their website and all these things. Well, it seems pretty clear here that, yeah, it says everybody, we're all supposed to be paying income taxes. Well, until you look at the definition of an employee in the tax code that says, you know about some of this? It says an employee is somebody who works for the government or a corporation. So is anybody in here an employee by that definition?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple, but not everybody. But everybody's paying the income tax, right? Now here's what's really interesting. The IRS had a manual that their employees would operate by, and this was the manual until the 70s, more or less. And then the Freedom of Information Act came along, where you could get all kinds of records, like employee manuals from different organizations. And at that point, the IRS did some shady stuff. I can't give you the details of exactly how it works, because this alone is one of those complicated things, and the IRS is a huge organization, and so is the tax code. It's difficult to understand, but I can tell you this. You can't get a copy of that manual, but I know somebody who has one, and it's really interesting what it says in there. The income tax and the IRS operates on the belief that every American has to pay income tax. And it is our responsibility as employees of the government to respect their beliefs and their rights. So if you believe you have to pay the income tax, they'll treat you like somebody who's supposed to pay the income tax. And if you don't pay something that you believe you have to pay, they'll treat you like a criminal, even though you might not be. Now, I don't want to tell everybody to go out and not pay their income tax, because a lot of people have gotten into trouble, and you have to be not only a conspiracy theorist, but a pretty intense lawyer to be able to navigate the system and figure out how to do it. But I do know people who have not filed or paid their taxes for decades. Some of them are ex-IRS agents. We got some in the room. It's not something that you go to jail for. In fact, willful failure to file. This is another law that most people are worried about. Willful failure to file. If you read that, it says any person who's supposed to file, who does not file, can be charged with willful failure to file. Does everybody in this room think that applies to them? I see some heads nodding. Are you a person? Because in the IRS code, for a person, in that chapter, it says, for the purpose of this chapter, a person is an employee of a corporation who's responsible for filing a tax return. So same head nods. Are you a person or are you not a person?
You're going past the 5. If you want to take
all right.
questions, or just use it up.
Okay. I could talk all day about this, but this is a lot about what the campaign is about. So I want to take any questions you have.
Over here. Are you familiar with Pete Hendrickson's work? Do you endorse it?
I endorse a lot of it, not all of it. I know there's some flaws in it, and this is the way I look at it. The first time NASA shot people into space, or maybe not the first time, people died. Now they shoot people into space all the time. The laws of physics didn't change. What changed is our information and our knowledge. So a lot of people have gone to prison trying to fight the system, but a lot of people are having good success with it now based on the information we learned from the people who have failed. The back.
Would you agree that the fair tax is a horrible idea?
The fair theft, yes. Any other questions? So I will say, I'll throw some other things out here. There's going to be a lot of pardoning. We're going to pardon everybody who's been convicted of nonviolent drug offenses, any kind of nonviolent crimes, tax crimes, money laundering, a lot of crimes that shouldn't be crimes that have gotten a lot of people in prison. We're going to end the drug war, and we're going to make a lot of changes that's going to make America safer and freer so that we can go on about living our lives the way we should have been, as we were intended to. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Joe Jorgensen. Just sat down. Stand up.
I'm going the wrong way. Hi, I'm Joe Jorgensen from the great state of South Carolina. Great I make my home in Greenville. I've taught at Clemson to millennials now for 13 years. I teach psychology. And I am the small government candidate for president. When the other two old parties send their candidates, send their politicians to Washington, they send them with a pen to write new laws, write new legislation, take more liberties away from you, write regulations to take away your guns, more red tape, more bureaucracy. I, on the other hand, Joe Jorgensen, I will go with an eraser to take away those laws, erase those laws, reduce those regulations. So the question here is, which do you prefer? The old parties writing new legislation, or a libertarian getting rid of those legislations and bringing freedom and liberty back to our lives? Does anybody have any questions?
Whoa.
Quiet crowd. Chuck.
You've been teaching millennials. This is interesting. You don't notice there aren't a lot of millennials in the room. What can you tell us about millennials and libertarianism? Are you finding some reception? Are you learning anything from them?
What I can say is millennials are the future. What I can say is older people are less likely to change their party and change their vote. And just by nature, they're more open to our way of thinking, to opting out. In fact, right now, iGeners, whenever they go on the internet, there's that opt-out box. And that's really what libertarianism is all about. We want to opt out of the government programs. And so that's their way of thinking, and they're our future. And the old baby boomers and greatest generation, our generations are responsible for passing the laws. It's really up to them to take care of the mess, and we really need to look to them for the future. Yes?
Yeah. Tell us about previous campaigns that you have run.
Oh, thank you. I've run to 1992 for U.S. Congress, 4th Congressional District for those of you in South Carolina, up in the upstate. And I was Harry Brown's 1996 running mate, which I will be discussing at the full debate tonight. If you haven't gotten tickets yet, not too late, right? Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
So to say you're going to repeal regulations, I agree with that, it's conceptual, but there has to be some kind of prioritization. Where would you start priority-wise? Would it be in banking, healthcare? What would be your top 3 things you'd be going after as far as regulatory?
We'll be getting into that as the campaign goes along, but healthcare is urgent. We need to do that. And of course, overall, we need to reduce spending. That needs to be a top priority, because unless we take dollars out of the hands of politicians, we're not taking away their power.
Right.
Yes.
So, in your experience as a professor with your background in academia, how do you think that translates to running a successful campaign?
I guess we can look to Liz Warren for the answer to that. and I hate to correct, I really hate to correct you, but Clemson would be upset if I didn't point out our senior lecturer, because academia has very strict rules. But your question is, how does that prepare me for running for a campaign?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'm used to talking to people in a room, and also I've listened to millennials' concerns, to their problems. I know how to speak their language, and I'm really surprised. Now we've got the next generation coming up. Yes, your generation, what I call the iGen generation, who think very differently from, if you and I were to sit down and have a conversation, we would look at things very differently. And I think a lot of people my age who haven't looked into it would be shocked at the differences. So, yes?
There was a question about how many millennials we had. How many people here are 40 or under? Raise your hands, please. You're all millennials.
Oh,
You're millennials.
Gen Z.
Or
Gen Z.
I will give you back your smartphone.
I think that, yes.
So, what is your educational background, like degrees, and also you teach psychology? What's your favorite course that you have taught so far?
Among my degrees are an MBA from SMU and a PhD in industrial organizational psychology from Clemson. My favorite class is intro because it's a little bit of everything, and I get to teach the freshmen, the people who are first coming to Clemson. So it's more of a hands-on as opposed to upper-level research. So I get to interact with more students. Yes?
In 2015-16, there was a town hall meeting on, I believe it was CNN, and Gary Johnson was asked about sex work.
Sex work?
Yes, sex work. What is your position on that?
I would say that's not an issue that I've heard the voters are interested in. Let me tell you what my platform is, and I would probably talk about the income tax or something, because that's not something that concerns most voters. And I as libertarians, we are all, and I really don't want to, I hope I'm not putting my foot in my mouth, but we're all just a little geeky in that we've got answers for everything, and we've got great answers for everything, and we just can't wait to share our answers for everything. I was on the campaign trail in 1996 for the VP nomination, and somebody asked me a question about Bureau of Land Management, and by golly, I just read a book the week before, and I could tell them all about the Bureau of Land Management. The problem is the average person out there doesn't care. And so as libertarians, I think we need to restrain ourselves and to persuade people or find the people who agree with what we do agree with.
So you don't have a position on sex work?
Oh, I have a position. It's not part of the campaign to outreach to bring new people into the party.
So you wouldn't answer the question if you were on CNN live on a town hall today?
I would. The short answer is no. Wow, okay, so now you're afraid to ask me questions.
Not over here.
I still have 2 minutes left. Anybody want to ask me a first question before people go up for seconds? Yes?
Okay. I think it's very interesting for people to know about executive experience. Can you tell us if you've run an organization before? Because this is an executive position you're running for.
Yes. I am running for president, which is an executive position. I have not run a company as large as Donald Trump has. However, I have run a small company. In the 1990s, I ran a computer software duplication company, which had 25 people, and we did about $2 million in sales. So I have owned and run companies before. Yes?
So if we wanted to know, I guess, what your positions were on certain issues, where would we go to find that? Is there a website that you're going to?
Yes, well, first of all, again, we'll be addressing that in the debate tonight. Also, we will have a website up at some point, and I'll be around, so I'd love to speak with you about it. But we are going after the things that millennials and young people are interested in, such as healthcare, the environment, and bringing our troops home. Yes?
So if your target audience is millennials, what is your plan to get those millennials to actually take action and go vote for you? Because millennials,
You're right.
We love your ideas, we love them. But am I actually going to go to the polls and vote?
You're absolutely right, because younger people as a whole, and not just millennials, but baby boomers when we were young. Now, I voted, of course, as soon as I could, but people tend to vote the older they get. So part of it's going to have to be to teach them that that voting is self-defense. We have to vote as self-defense against others. I see 2 more hands, but I've got 15 seconds. So, but I can talk to you afterwards. I'll be happy to.
Our next candidate is Adam Kokesh.
Yeah.
Just a little housekeeping first. Would you please raise your hand
if you're an undercover cop,
Not today, NSA.
Would you please raise your hand if you're undercover here on behalf of the South Carolina Elections Commission? All right, well, first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me here this weekend. Thank you for everything you do to make this party incredible. I've been all over the country the last couple of years. I've gone to more Libertarian Party state conventions than I can count, and it is great to see all over the country more energy, more organization, more enthusiasm coming into the party everywhere. And I gotta hand it to you. I really see this embodied in South Carolina. So for the officers, thank you so much for making this happen. Of course, for Stuart for putting this event together tonight. Is everybody gonna be at the debate tonight? Yeah. Yes. Stuart, make that happen, please. All right, so if that's the case, I can spare you all the rah-rah campaign speech and talk to you like libertarians, right? You want to hear what this campaign is about? You know, every time I have to introduce myself as a presidential candidate, I throw up in my mouth a little bit. Because you really have to be some kind of psychopath to want to be president of the United States of America. Yeah. Even as a benevolent dictator, think I'm going to put on the ring of power and it's not going to affect me. Now, I know we have faced the criticism before libertarian candidates are inexperienced, are unprofessional, are underqualified. Does anybody here think Donald Trump is qualified to be president of the United States? Other than Donald Trump and people on his payroll, does anybody think Donald Trump is qualified? Okay. Does anybody think Elizabeth Warren is qualified to be president of the United States? I do. Well, the reality is that no one is qualified to put on the ring of power. No one should wield this authority over other human beings that should not exist in the first place, that the founders of this country never envisioned. And even for the people who love this constitutional system, it was never designed to govern 330 million people when it was set up. And I would say it was a power grab from the Articles of Confederation. And I know y'all are the nerds who will debate history on that with me till, well, I guess whenever things shut down at the after party tonight, Stuart, I'll be here till the end.
Unfortunately midnight, and we hit the...
Okay, the after party's at the Kokesh campaign bus.
It's a short walk.
This campaign is about localization. My platform is the peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy of the entire federal government in a way that leaves us with 50 independent states and up to 562 sovereign native nations. So any fans of getting rid of the federal government? Am I in the right room? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. The thing about this message and what I've found on the campaign trail is that it unites everybody. We don't have to argue aesthetics. We can focus on the ethics and the love behind this message. We don't have to argue about what government should or shouldn't be when we can say, I want your rights respected in your community. I want you to have the freedom to live in a system that represents your values and meets your needs. That's what unites not just the clans of freedom here, but every American around that which makes us America. And there's one other thing that we don't really address enough as libertarians, because we're against redistribution, right? Yeah. But we're for justice, aren't we? A lot's been stolen from us.
Yeah.
And this is how we take it back. And this is how we give the American people a real choice in 2020. So I want to share two quotes real quick. One from Leela Watson, the Aboriginal Australian activist, who said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." That is the attitude we should be embracing to be a libertarian party that can unify all Americans. The last quote here is from Marianne Williamson, who you might also know as a candidate. But I think she could have been speaking to the Libertarian Party when she said this. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have 3 minutes for questions.
So Adam, I mean, as libertarians are both considered far different from Republicans and Democrats, sort of on the fringe, sort of crazy, so to speak. But I would say that you are, even compared to libertarians, insane. So are you ready to die for what you speak here and what you say you believe?
I think I would quote Goldwater here. Extremity in defense of liberty is no vice. And I think my record has proven that I am uniquely qualified to say I am happy to put my life on the line for this cause. And there's a decent chance that any libertarian candidate for president offering a platform of significant change that really does threaten the existing power structure might have to face that. And I know that if I did, I would take the last ounce of life in me to put a smile on my face, if that was how it came to it for me.
Thank you.
What would you say is the biggest issue facing America today?
The biggest issue?
Yes.
Government. Or transversely freedom, the other side of the same coin. It's a paradigm that we're stuck in, that we're mired in this attitude of statism, of control, of central authority. Again, localization. This is the everybody gets what they want strategy. This is the way out. Localization is the cure for polarization. Because liberals and conservatives don't have to meet as enemies if they're no longer forced into the one-size-fits-nobody solution. This is how we bring people into the party. And what I love about this message and this campaign, it's been so fun. Y'all saw the bus outside. Traveling with that, you pull up to any gas station, big city, small town, doesn't matter. People come up, they want to talk. The thing I hear more than anything else is, I don't normally vote, but I'd come out and vote for that. I think 2020 is the opportunity to have a breakout year for the Libertarian Party. Being realistic, I understand it would take a black swan for a Libertarian candidate, even Jesus himself, if we were so lucky, to win in 2020. But we can have a breakout year if we pull in, we reach those conventional non-voters and independents. And just for the last of my time here, a couple administrative notes. For any of you guys who are going to be delegates to the National Convention next year, I look forward very much to seeing you in Austin. We got a lot of fun stuff planned. I hope to have your vote and your support there. I hope you all are as excited for 2020 in general as I am, regardless of who the nominee is. We have a new Facebook frame. Very easy to add. Search Kokesh for President on Facebook. KokeshForPresident.com. We have a professional photographer here. Sarah, if you'd raise your hand. If anybody wants their next awesome Facebook page picture, please talk to Sarah. You got a copy of my book in every place. I have you sign as many as you like. And I'd like to make myself accessible. I've got business cards for everybody here. I think about half the people in the room already have my number, but for those of you who don't, please come find me.
By the way, you
Thank
understand
sir.
it was $10 a second fine. Suggestion before we continue, so they can start tallying. How about if we take a minute, let them go out, turn them in, check in.
Okay.
No, we gotta know who we got it from, make sure.
Well, then I'm gonna wait.
Or do you want to just let it?
Let's finish here.
All right.
All right, our next candidate is Jim Ruff.
came before me in the past hour, I am seeking the Libertarian Party nomination for president in 2020. In order for you to understand why I'm standing here, I need to talk to you about 2016. Like you, I was an activist in my own state, first Arizona, then New York when I was stationed there. I was a delegate in 2016. I worked on Darryl Perry's campaign, and I was hoping that in such a polarizing year, as we're trending toward more and more and more federal government, that we would have a strong candidate who would stand up and speak out about these things. Because let's be honest with ourselves. As libertarians, we have a much higher probability of getting elected at a local or state level and affecting positive change there than we do at the federal level. So what is the point of us running a presidential candidate? Well, ballot access for one, and two, of course, you need a spokesperson. And a spokesperson should be fearless. A spokesperson should be able to articulate the very values that define us as libertarians. We have so many arguments over minutia, but the fundamental fact is that we believe in negative rights. We believe in the rights to life, liberty, justly acquired property. And we believe that society has a corresponding duty in order to not enslave, not steal, not murder us. And if government is to indeed exist, the only time that is permissible for it to exist is to protect and preserve those rights, and nothing else. And yet you have candidates who tell you they want to put a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage, that government is the cure for all that ails you, even though government is responsible for those very sins. So we have to have a candidate run for office, and that candidate needs to be able to articulate those ideas in such a way that our down ballot candidates are able to take that concept and roll it into the issues that affect them on a local or state level. That's our job as candidates. I was disappointed in the Johnson-Weld ticket, particularly Weld, because I felt he went off script many times and he did a bad job. The few times that we had an opportunity to be represented, he completely missed the mark. And we had people who were told they would bring money, that they would support our down ballot candidates, and they would ensure that we would get that magical 15. And so we all worked hard, very, very hard in 2016 in order to ensure we had ballot access, that they were there, that they got the votes, and we got nothing. Our down ballot candidates were snubbed whenever they had a campaign stop. They misarticulated the things that make us distinctly different from the duopoly, and then they left. Now one of them is running on the Republican Party's ticket. So, are we going to be libertarian in 2020, or are we going to take another Republican? Are we going to confuse the electorate? We are not Republicans. We are not Democrats. We are fearless advocates for liberty. We believe in the rights of the individual above all else. There is no blurring of those lines. There's no misapprehension. It is very simple. And we're right. That's the other thing. Why do we act like we are embarrassed to be on stage and that we're seeking approval? We're right. Everybody else knows it innately. Anytime you talk to anyone, they know it. They're like, yes, I agree with you, absolutely. So why don't we tap into that and tell the truth fearlessly? That is why I'm running. I think that I, as someone who has worked in manufacturing for 15 years, I've been part of this movement for 10 years, I've worked in both Arizona and in New York, and on the national level. I've been here this whole time, and I will continue to be here. We recognize as libertarians we have to get up earlier, we have to start sooner, and we have to push harder to get that rock up the hill. That is why I'm running, and that is why I'm seeking your vote in 2020 in Austin. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, sir.
With U.S. foreign policy being how it is, with the states starting wars in places where we don't really need to have government troops, how would you deal with foreign policy in a rough administration?
Oh, mercy. Foreign policy. Gosh, this is my jam. When I went to college, I got dual baccalaureates in communication and political science, and I specifically focused on international relations, just so you guys have some background there. Foreign policy, we've had a same concept of foreign policy up until 9/11. We basically function in that Cold War mentality that everything we had to do strategically was to prevent the Soviet threat from spreading. Then we had 9/11, we were thrown for a loop, and we've been on this protracted war on terror. But we don't define terrorism, it's whoever's in power says what it is. And we haven't defined who our enemies are, it's just wherever we think is appropriate for us to be. And it usually comes down to natural resources and economic gain. My job would be, in order to foster a healthier international climate, end all foreign wars of aggression, bring our troops back home, and build relationships based strictly on diplomacy without capitulation and free trade. Which, it's funny, the tariff thing is so illogical. Applying those tariffs is something that Trump has done, and in so doing has not only made it difficult for folks like me in manufacturing to get those commodities that you need, but it's also made it incredibly difficult to have healthy relationships with foreign nations, because you're effectively telling them that we will penalize you for being successful and that we won't trade with you. I don't think that that's a good way to develop healthy relations on an international level. So absolutely, it would come down to a matter of get government out of the way and permit us to engage in free trade. To that looker in the back.
So why is John Phillips the best vice presidential candidate?
For the low, low price of $17, you can see him in January. No, the reason, that's actually a good question. And not necessarily the part about why you're so wonderful, but the part about why am I running as a slate? Because I know there's a little bit of misapprehensions about that, what that means. We are not a foregone conclusion. We've been delegates ourselves, we're activists, we know how the process works. You select your presidential candidate and your vice presidential candidate separately. And it's entirely possible that the delegates will decide that they want one or the other or neither at all. And we respect the will of the delegates, provided, of course, that all of our delegates are libertarians. So we are only running as a slate strictly for the reason that I said before, which is you have to get up earlier, you have to start sooner, you have to push. We're laying groundwork here, all of us as candidates. Not just for our own campaigns, but for the Libertarian Party as a whole. Right. Any attention that Adam Kokesh gets, or Jacob Hornberger, or Ken Armstrong, or Dan Vermin, any attention that we get ultimately will be funneled into whoever the final candidate is. And it's important that we do that. We start earlier, we push harder, and we run everyone we can wherever we can, at any level, to make sure that we get that message out. So that is why I partnered with John. I thought it would behoove us, in order to split the difference, that we run as a slate and push for that, while we make sure that the delegates know, whatever you guys decide to do, just pick the person you feel is the best representative for our values and beliefs.
We've been hearing a lot about the deep state, the administrative state. What do you propose to do about that?
Could you clarify what you mean?
Yes, Congress delegates many of its functions to the executive branch.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The executive branch agencies then act as if they're a complete
Correct.
Government, legislating, judging, penalizing,
Right.
everything, and you have no recourse.
Agreed.
Big problem.
Yeah, okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right, so to address that, what he was talking about is the fact that the executive branch has basically become an all-in-one. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that Congress does not do a good job of creating legislation that's very explicit about what they want to achieve. So it comes down to the executive branch, which is the enforcement arm of the state, making the determination of what laws apply where and to whom. So they are a one-stop shop, and that is completely antithetical to the foundation of our country. We were designed to be split into three distinct branches, and it was so that you had the legislature was responsible for creating laws, the executive branch was responsible for enforcing those laws, and then the judiciary was responsible for determining constitutionality. That's how it was functional. So what I would do is, first of all, stop leaning on executive orders as supplemental legislation. The sole purpose of executive orders is to ensure, is that telling me I'm done?
$60. $80.
All right, thank you. Two more to go. First, our next candidate is Vermin Supreme.
Are you ready? Ready! All right. When I say free, you say ponies. Free! Ponies! Free! Ponies! Free! Ponies! When I say zombie, you say Power! Zombie!
Power!
Zombie!
Power!
Zombie!
Power!
When I say time, you say travel. Time!
Travel!
Time!
Travel!
Time!
Travel!
When I say mandatory, you say toothbrushing. Mandatory!
Toothbrushing!
Mandatory!
Toothbrushing!
Mandatory!
Toothbrushing!
That's right, friends. My boot is a magic boot. It has allowed me to amplify my free speech, First Amendment rights exponentially. It has allowed me to communicate with millions of citizens and media from around the world. This is the magic boot that could bring all the young voters to the LP's yard. But of course, there are some things that you need to know about this magic boot, and I'm demonstrating one of them right here, that it is not always attached to my head. You also need to understand that, of course, I am not my character. I am not always on. I am not always disruptive. No. In fact, I am a very reasonable man with a very reasonable offer to put on the table. There are 3.9 million high school graduates a year. Give me 2 of those years, that's 8 million kids. Add that to the 17 million college students in college and in given year, that's a pool of 25 million potential voters. You give me 1 out of 4 of that voting pool, that is your 5% right there. Now once again, of course, we're not going to, that does not count the millions upon millions of disillusioned, disenfranchised, and disgusted voters that might very well take a symbolic Vermin Supreme candidacy seriously. There is also a amazing tapestry of subcultures here in America that include such things as comic con cosplay nerds, magic card and D&D nerds, crypto enthusiast nerds, political nerds, Robert's Rules of Order nerds, kinky sex nerds, furries, bronies, drag queens, roller derby girls, indie music scenesters, art weirdos, film nerds, podcasters, Reddits, Discords, Steemits, and across the political spectrum, those are my audiences. They all fall under the geek nerd umbrella, and they are my likely voting pool. I am Vermin Supreme, and I am the pragmatist choice. Once again, of course, many people do indeed have some questions about a Vermin Supreme candidacy. There are so many good arguments why I would be the best candidate that the LP could field, but there are also concerns, and I would like to address those concerns as best as I can. One of these concerns that people have is in the framing. Can a serious political party put up a candidate who is perceived to be a joke candidate and not be saddled with the joke party mantle? And I believe that that is indeed possible. And I do believe that it is purely in the framing. And I believe that the LP could get ahead of this joke with something as simple and eloquent as we are the LP party. We do have values. We do have the things that we are working on. We do have things that are so important to us that we are donating and campaigning all sorts of time to it. However, and the pivot comes, the electoral system, the duopoly, the presidential elections have risen to the level of a joke. And therefore, with love and spite, here's Vermin Supreme. So I'm not out to troll the Libertarian Party. I am here to offer you the opportunity to help you harness the character that I've developed, the universe of platform planks, the millions of the fan base across the political spectrum, and I am willing to offer that to you to further the cause of liberty, to spread the word of the libertarian movement, and things like that. Thank you. I'm Vermin Supreme. I will take your questions now. It's a magic boot. Yes.
Mr. Supreme, you have run for office many times, sometimes running for mayor of Baltimore, sometimes running for president a lot of times.
Yes.
With different parties.
Yes.
Why should we believe that you are serious about winning the Libertarian nomination this time?
I will say that in my past, this is a natural extension of my 30 years of seeking the presidency. I will say clearly that this is my first actual campaign. Up to this point, every previous campaign, whether I was running as a Republican or a Democrat in the New Hampshire primary, they were pretty clearly spoofs. This campaign is very different in that I am seriously seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. I believe that I do have a body of work and a level of experience that I can bring to the party. I believe that I can grow the party. Believe me, I'm a libertarian. I follow the platforms. I understand this, and I want to present the platform to the American public. And all you can do is take my word for it. It's a serious offer. It's on the table. Thank you. Yes.
What are some of your, I guess, favorite authors or books that are in the Liberty genre?
I will say I'm not that well versed in the Liberty book canon. I will say that I have a basic understanding of the platform itself, and have a full agreement with that, and certainly have agreed in my statement of principle to let that be a guiding part of my campaign. It will be presenting, in addition to the wacky ponies and zombies, toothbrushing things, bringing it right back to the Libertarian Party platform, because I believe that it's only fair and right for a candidate, for a party, to be able to present what that party is and what is a party but a sum of its platform claims. Thank you. Yes.
So if this is a serious campaign, how do you plan to bridge the gap between your character of the Free Ponies mandatory brushing, which is obviously not libertarian at all,
Of course.
to actually getting the libertarian message across to people in the younger generation you're
Well,
talking about?
I believe if you witness any of my, or watch any of my interviews, any in-depth interviews, I am very fluid at going back and forth between in character, out of character, between making quips and amusing, entertaining jokes, and then talking about the serious issues. And I believe this would be very similar in that the synergy that would be created with the Vermin Supreme Libertarian nomination would attract so much media. It would be incredible. And yes, I would start out with a joke, and yes, I would immediately pivot to the seriousness and the serious issues of the world of the campaign. And I would try and keep all of my utterances in reality-based that would be strictly libertarian-based. And I'm open to having advisors there with me. I want to work with the LNC, and I want to make sure that the messaging is on target and that I am serving you, the Libertarian Party, as a candidate. I want to serve you in the best possible way that I can. Yes.
Let's say you're right and that you are able to get all those people and get us our 5%, which is would be a great thing. Both during your campaign and in the following campaigns, what answer do you suggest that down-ticket candidates give when, say, the mayor of Florence, or somebody's running for mayor of Florence, and they say, I'm running as the Libertarian, and people go, oh, but isn't that the guy with the boot on his head? What answer would you suggest for those people?
Once again, I guess that would be incumbent upon the candidate to be able to pivot on that. I believe that if we just continue to hammer the message that the LP has put up Vermin Supreme to point out its disgust and disillusionment with the federal election system, I believe it can be overcome. I don't believe it's insurmountable, and I believe that the vast media attention that I will be bringing to the party can be used and pivoted very easily by the down-ticket candidates, and I am happy to help in developing any sort of strategies that will aid that. Thank you.
All right, and our final candidate this afternoon is Jacob Hornberger.
I'm Jacob Hornberger. I'm founder and president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. It's nice to be here with you at your state convention. And it's a big honor for me to hereby announce at your convention my candidacy for the Libertarian Party presidential nomination in 2020. Why am I making this race? One simple reason. I want to live in a free society. For 30 years, I've been advancing liberty in the educational arena. And I should emphasize that the Future Freedom Foundation is not endorsing my candidacy. And I've just come to a point in my life where I said I'm going to throw myself into this battle in a bigger way in the political process by taking on the people who have destroyed our freedom in this country, Democrats and Republicans. We live in a system that's based on massive mandatory charity, with such socialist programs as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, corporate bailouts, farm subsidies, and many more. There is no way to reconcile mandatory charity with a free society. Freedom necessarily entails the right to keep everything you earn and you decide what to do with it. For decades, Democrats and Republicans have waged one of the most brutal, vicious, and racially bigoted wars in American history, the war on drugs. Imagine putting somebody into jail because some politician or bureaucrat doesn't agree with that particular substance. A free society necessarily depends on ingesting whatever you want to ingest, no matter how harmful it is, and it's no business of the government. Democrats and Republicans for 100 years have destroyed our monetary system. That's how we've ended up with these cheap alloyed coins and Federal Reserve notes that promise to pay nothing. A free society depends on ending the Fed and implementing a free market monetary system. All my life, these people, Democrats and Republicans, have waged one of the most brutal, deadly wars against immigrants. And at the same time imposed a police state in the American Southwest through this socialist system of immigration controls. And that's what it is. It's based on socialist central planning. That's why there's been this perpetual crisis in immigration. People have a right to cross borders freely.
Hear, hear.
Free trade and open immigration, open borders, it is the only solution to this problem. And it is the only system that is consistent with liberty, free markets, moral principles, and religious principles. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And then there's the national security state, perhaps the greatest destroyer of our freedom. The CIA, the Pentagon, the NSA, and their dark side policies of invasions, occupations, kidnapping, state-sponsored assassinations, sanctions, embargoes, secret surveillance, and the persecution of people who dare to expose these dark side occurrences of the national security state. This is a totalitarian form of government structure. We have the right to the restoration of our limited government republic. That was the type of governmental structure that the Constitution bequeathed to us. And so my campaign is going to revolve around liberty. If I had my druthers, every family across America would be debating and discussing two important questions. What does it really mean to be free? And what is the legitimate role of government in a genuinely free society? If you want to get a sense of how I've advanced liberty in a principled way for the past 30 years, I invite you to go to our website at fff.org. Or buy the new book that I'm coming out with on Amazon in the next couple of days, My Passion for Liberty by Jacob Hornberger. It explains my background, my philosophy, how I discovered libertarianism, and it explains to the American people, this book, why libertarianism is the key, the solution to the many problems that Democrats and Republicans have foisted upon our nation. And I'm pleased to say that a real-life hero of mine in the freedom movement has written an introduction to this book. And that would be former Congressman and former presidential candidate Ron Paul. Along with a good friend and colleague of mine who teaches economics at the Citadel, a libertarian professor named Richard Eveling. We have a chance to lead the world out of this status morass. I also invite you to visit my campaign website, which will go live shortly after this convention. I also ought to mention that my new book does state that I announced my candidacy at the Libertarian Party State Convention of South Carolina. I don't have any pretensions about where I stand in this race. I'm starting at the bottom. I fully understand that. But I want to be your presidential nominee. I want to be your spokesman. I want to tell people what you're fighting for, what your philosophy is, why you come to these meetings, why you've devoted so much of your time and money to these efforts. And I will guarantee you one thing. If I am accorded the honor of being your nominee in May of next year in Austin, you will be able to sleep well at night from May to November, knowing that your presidential spokesman is explaining your philosophy, your beliefs, clearly, succinctly, and without compromise. All that I ask over the next 6 months is just give me the chance. I know most of you, many of you don't know me. Give me the chance over these 6 months to earn your confidence and your trust in a campaign of principle for the party of principle. Now, I know I didn't qualify for your debate tonight. I didn't file by your deadline, but you're important to me. And so I've rented a room, the Rhodes room here in the hotel. As soon as this convention's over at 3, I'm going to give a 15-minute talk called Adhering to Principle, or a campaign of principle for the party of principle, in which I'm going to explain why I believe that a principle campaign is so critically important for the presidential race in 2020. Thank you for giving me the time to announce my candidacy here, and thank you for the organizers for doing the same.
A couple minutes for questions still.
Yes.
Mr. Hornberger, you have run for office before. You ran as an independent candidate for Senate in Virginia. Why are you choosing to run in the Libertarian Party now and not back then?
Okay. Question is, I ran for U.S. Senate in Virginia in 2012. Why did I run as an independent? Why am I running as a Libertarian Party candidate now? 30 years ago, I joined the Libertarian Party. I served 3 terms on the platform committee. Those of us that were on the platform committee, we are a small faction, strived to keep purity within the party. We believe that principles matter. In 2000, there was one heck of a battle that took place. I took on, along with a group in Pennsylvania, that we took on the party hierarchy. We took on the chosen pre-nomination candidate of people in the party hierarchy. We made a lot of enemies. The battle was over ethics. I believed 20 years ago, and I made a lot of enemies over it, but I believed 20 years ago that ethical standards have to matter to this party. We have to set the highest ethical standards, and that's what the battle was about. Then, 20 years later, I believe it more than ever. You've got Biden and his son involved in ethical corruption in Ukraine. You've got the military staying at Trump's resorts. You got McConnell over there engaged with ethical matters with China. That battle was so fierce in the party that when I ran for Senate, the party hierarchy in Virginia, or at least some in the party hierarchy in Virginia, wouldn't lay a finger to get me on the ballot. I had to get 10,000 valid signatures, and they wouldn't help me, and I needed to get 15,000. So I got it myself. I got some friends, I hired a petitioner, I got on the ballot. So I still wanted to be an LP candidate, but it was clear that the party hierarchy was going to teach me a lesson. Just like Justin Amash has been taught a lesson. When you take on the party hierarchy and the chosen pre-nomination of the candidate for wrongdoing, you're going to pay a price. And so that's when I decided it's not worth it. They're going to sabotage my campaign. And I wanted to run a good campaign. And I ended up getting 7% of the vote as an independent. But I have no doubts to this day that if I had run as an LP candidate, which I wanted to do, and had the structure behind me, we would have gotten our 10% from major party states. That's the story. Oh, it's in the whole battle is detailed in chapter 21 of my new book, My Passion for Liberty. Thank you.
We should give all of these candidates a big round of applause. Commitment to take on this enterprise, and they're all to be respected.
What I suggest we do is recess, we go through the whole insurance, all we find out that it's all out on the way so that we got the ballots.
We are basically finished. We need to collect your ballots for the delegates to the National Convention.
The same place you got them.
Leave them at the check-in desk.
Check out.
Well, now it's turned into a checkout desk. so we can make sure we're getting all the proper ballots. We are going to recess this convention until recall, sometime probably in June, I guess, for the nomination of our candidates and any other time as necessary. So unless there is any other business for the good of the order, I'm going to declare us in recess. And the state committee will hold its reorganization meeting here at 3 o'clock. Okay.
Good. Don't forget to keep your pencil. You can sign your words now.
Things are happening. I gotta go.
Don't forget to turn in your mouth. Yeah.
Back to the table.
Yeah, they've been submitted by the county.
Yeah, I got Hornberger started 30 seconds late because Vermin was so freaking boring, I fell asleep. Literally. And Vermin was so boring, I fell asleep. I woke up from rough from the time.
Yeah, we'll just, right up here.
That's okay. That's what Sean said. Oh, I'm so good.
I'm glad I didn't need it. You want to see the real one? But I'm embarrassed to bring it out.
I gotta go take a leak.
She chased me down this way.
I met him when I was 15 and got married when I was 27. It took me 12 years I have nothing if not text me a lot.
Well, you have $170 fine. Rough had a $90 fine. Technically, Hornberger had a $330 fine. Skip the part was 30. I literally fell asleep. Supreme was so boring this last half. And I was like,
When that happens, part of it.
no, I'm not going to run anything. I'm just going to stand. Do you understand that once you beat last night that
Yeah. So anyway, don't worry about it.